Yeah. Nice.
There we go.
I love when I get on first try. It always makes me excited. Because sometimes technology doesn't work, and that's not fun.
Yep.
So, all right. So, welcome to our live tonight at it's around 7. I'm Dr. Nikovich, Chief PT, and this is Yani. I'll have her introduce herself, and we're going to talk about nutrition geared towards powerlifting specifically.
Hello, I'm Yani, short for Yanni. I don't have the fancy doctor in front, but almost did. But I'm currently a science teacher and a certified nutritionist for Paradigm.
Nice. Yeah, so I've known Yani for a while now, and she coaches a lot of people through Paradigm and does their nutrition. So I figured really geared towards our powerlifters and how to fuel appropriately as a powerlifter, how it can be a little bit different than general population fueling, because it is a different sport and it's specifically a strength sport and a power sport.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think in a lot of people tend to take that part of nutrition just for granted, and they assume that it's the same. And I mean, for the general part, it's pretty similar to what you would eat on a general basis, but there are a few things that as a powerlifter you can do to maximize your performance.
Like, what would you say? Like more carbs, more protein? Do you worry more about fats? What do you
Um,
prioritize?
For power lifters, I definitely prioritize carbs and just understanding the difference between a slow acting and a fast acting carb can be a big of a difference. It can make a big of a difference if you understand how to use which one, when to use it, and which are those type of carbs, because you want to be able to maximize your performance. And if you can use something as small as a little trick like that, it can make a big difference. And some people have medical conditions like a diabetic who can't really, do that on the general basis. So
Yeah, which makes sense because you want to make sure you're obviously optimizing performance, which is always ideal, especially in the powerlifting thing, because if you have like a top single or whatever it may be, you want to be at your best. What are some like quick acting carbs that you would suggest that your athletes use usually, or you recommend them use before either they're lifting or to get in their system so they feel strong during their lifts or in between lifts?
yeah, so a lot of times when I start with a new client, that's one of the first things that I like to clarify, just understanding the difference between a simple white rice versus a brown rice. The general diet or diet world has us believing that most things are unhealthy, or too much of this is bad. Like, carbs are not the enemy, and I try to make sure that when I work with someone, they understand it's okay to eat, it's okay to have your pizza, it's okay to have your rice, to have your oatmeal, your cookies. It's just understanding when to use them. So when I work with a client, someone who, for example, has top singles the next day or heavy lifts, or are at very end of prep, we discuss using a brown rice or a longer grain rice, because it takes longer time for your body to break down, and
Mm-hmm.
therefore it's going to release the energy slowly
Yeah.
the night before, right? Because you want to start carb loading the night before. Unfortunately, people usually assume that, oh, I got to eat a ton of food just an hour before. And it doesn't work like that, because your body can't physically break it down that fast. So if you are smart in the way you carb load, you start the night before.
Yeah.
Start priming your system and adding in those slow acting carbs that are going to release and break down those bonds slowly over time. And
Mm-hmm.
as the day progresses, the next day, you sleep and you don't digest much at night because your body's too busy keeping your heart and your brain functioning. So the next day we start with, yes, in the morning, unless you're training very early in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
I would switch to a faster acting, like a white bread, a white rice,
Yeah.
not necessarily oatmeal. So instead of oatmeal, I would do cream of rice, because
Mm-hmm.
it's faster to digest and faster to get that energy out of it. If you're training later in the evening, like I usually do, I would keep with the slow, the brown rices or bread in the morning, oatmeal. And
Mm-hmm.
then for lunch, start switching now to the white carbs. This way your
Right.
body can get the energy. So it's really just understanding the difference between something that's higher in fiber and longer in grains that's going to take your body just more time to break down versus something that's less processed and easier to digest. And unfortunately, I find this, and I know a lot of my clients used to find this confusing. Like, why do I, rice bothers my stomach, or I
Yeah.
don't do well with rice. I feel too stuffed. There
Yeah.
are so many rices out there
Yeah.
that it's a lot of information. But the simple thing to take away from rice is if it's a white rice, you're gonna get the energy faster out of it because your body doesn't have to break it down as much
Mm-hmm.
because it has no fiber. It has very little bit of vitamins, very little bit of the good stuff that we do want in a long-term energy. Whereas brown rice or quinoa, that has a lot more fiber, so it's harder for the body to break down those fibrous nutrients from it. So it takes more time. So that's really just understanding that. And when you go to the supermarket, you have long grain white rice, short grain white rice, you have basmati rice, you
Yeah.
have jasmine rice, you have brown rice,
Yep.
you have all these type of rices that if you just separate the brown versus white, it just means high fiber, low fiber. If you are looking for something quick energy, you go with low fiber.
Mm.
If you want something that's going to keep you full longer term, you
Yeah.
go with something like a brown rice.
I think that's a great way to easily phrase it because it does get confusing, I'm sure. And I've always heard that too. It's like, oh, short grain, long grain, brown rice, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, like even when I was bodybuilding, that was the same thing. You're like, you want this, you want that. And it was kind of like confusing.
Yeah.
Hi,
There's
Thor.
Thor.
So also that like, which is interesting. And I wonder how many times you see this when you start with a new athlete. How often do you see that they're actually underfueling yourself? Because recently I was working on one of your athletes and she was like, I eat so much and I never thought that I would lose weight. And like we talked about this kind of on the last live I did with nutrition and keeping yourself fueled appropriately. But like, do you see that more often in powerlifting? Do you see it more with males and females? Which one do
Okay.
do you see?
So much. Thor just took like 10 cookies, so there's your
He's
fast
carbo
action.
loading. Yes.
Yeah,
He's going to work out
those
later with
toys.
you.
Believe it or not, it never ceases to amaze me how many people underfuel.
Okay.
When I start with a client, they automatically assume, take them outside, please. They automatically assume that I'm eating enough or I'm getting enough of the right foods. And we're all humans. We all have a busy life. I don't ever like to follow any crazy trends or you're going to get fast results from this or that, because at the end of the day, this is a lifestyle and you have to be able to, especially with powerlifting, you have to understand that you are constantly putting your body through major stress. And fueling isn't just for performance, it's also for recovery. If you're not fueling enough during your entire day, you're not going to recover and do well. You may get lucky and have a spurt of energy and hit that top single. But at the end of the day, at some point, you run yourself down. And if you don't eat enough, you don't recover. And so when I do start with a new client, I always have them just do your basics, track. Let me see what you eat. Let me see how much you eat. And they become surprised to find out that after a week of tracking, and I go through their breakdown and I tell them like, all right, this is our step one. Here's our goal. We're going to start here. You're under eating by like 500-600 calories. Imagine how much you could really maximize your performance if you were eating enough. And it doesn't just mean like start eating enough for 1 week. No, your body has to take time to adjust and acclimate to get to that point. And when we do end up going up in calories, they're like, oh, but how am I losing weight? Like, for example, Courtney. Courtney was one client who, to this day, we're just getting to maintenance calories. And this woman is eating well over 300 grams of carbs. Normally, people come to me, or she came to me eating under 200 grams of carbs. She has lost over 12 pounds, has not once stalled in performance.
She's continuing to lose weight.
She's still dropping weight. Like this past weekend, she weighed in and she's like, how am I losing weight? How am I still tightening up my belt? even Ashley, who's a
Yeah.
completely different athlete, she's a super heavyweight athlete, has continuously lost on such a small deficit. And the whole thing is you have to prime your metabolism. You don't just start with eating a ton of food. We work backwards. You teach your body to break down a certain amount of carbs. Every week we adjust it. We manage it. And when they start eating consistently, they start dropping, because unfortunately, you know, the diet culture has us thinking that the less you eat, the more you lose. And that's the total opposite.
Yeah. Yeah.
Total opposite.
And so when you say like you prime the metabolism or get the metabolism ready for it, you mean you don't go from, like, let's say they're saying eating 1,500 calories, you don't go from 1,500 to 2,500 in a week and just be like, good luck, have fun.
No, and the funny thing is, Eric Helms did a study, and I love his the way he explains it, because he dumbs down the science for the general population to really understand it. Now, you and I are both nerds, and we will sit there reading the data and everything.
Yeah.
But there are studies that show that you can go from 1,500 calories to 2,500. However, you have to be under the understanding that for 2 to 3 weeks, your body weight is going to go up. And that's normal. That's just water loading into your cells, because your body's not used to eating so many grams of carbs in a day. And when you do eat that much, you're just going to retain some extra water. So it's going to take your body some time to adjust and understand what is happening. It's not going to be I'm eating, 2,500 calories now, so I'm fine. And with that being said, when I have, like, most of my clients are eating well over 250 grams of carbs, even those who are cutting. Unless they're like tiny like me, we eat a little less. We're not that fortunate. But even those, like, it's not just a free for all. It's really having balance. If you have family and you are not a young athlete who doesn't have responsibilities and you're living life, great. We can create some balance where you can still go and enjoy, like I have a client who asked me this weekend, well, how do I go about this? I have to go out to a taco place with my friends where they have like the food trucks. And I was like, all right, so let's plan for it. Let's keep protein intake up, save on your fats, and then we can enjoy some extra meals. So it's not just a free for all. It's let's really maximize your performance by fueling up correctly, getting the right amount of carbs, fats, and keeping your protein up, and not just eating 2,500 calories in like 70% is fat, because then you're going to put on a good amount of fat. So
which makes sense.
We definitely prime it by just slowly going up. And that's the fun part, because I love to show people that you can go up in calories every week or every 2 weeks, and you're going to be dropping and dropping and dropping. So it makes your cutting process easier. You're starting from, by the time we do start cutting, like sometimes I start with someone who their maintenance calories are 2,700, and because they power lift and they're burning so much more food, so much more calories, our starting base is going to be higher, and the higher we go, the better off we are, because when we do cut, I don't have to start you on a very low deficit. We can start with a good strong base, and your energy levels at least can stay up. So that's fun to see them like, oh, this happens. How am I losing weight? And that's what makes it fun for me.
And they're getting stronger, which is always fun to see too, because that's half the battle, is like, it's always the thing. How do you improve? And from what I've known and what you work on is like, how can we get you to, if you need to, and most people don't need to in powerlifting lose weight, we'll say, unless they're going down a weight class or whatever. But a lot of people, unless you're an elite level, should you actually be worrying about your weight class, you kind of just go in. But some people, there's nothing wrong with wanting to fuel yourself appropriately. And then if you feel yourself appropriately, you happen to lose weight, well, that's great. And you may end up going into a lighter weight class anyway, because you're like, I feel good, my lifts are stronger, I'm lighter, which means you'll be better. So I think that's kind of the thing where it's like, you don't need to, it's not so much of like, let's lose weight to lose weight. It's let me just make sure I'm taking care of my body healthily. And if I happen to lose weight, which it seems to happen
Ashley.
Exactly. Like she's a prime
Ashley,
example.
funny thing is, I posted a video of her, and Kate had posted the same video of her competing in March at a certain weight. and her recently at the same body weight, and her body composition is completely different.
Yeah.
I showed someone today at work and they were like, what? No way, that's the same person. I'm like, yeah, that's the same person. Guess what? Within the same year.
Yeah.
And just really 2 months into actually tracking her food,
Yep.
understanding what you're putting into your body.
Yeah.
And you know, I have 5 kids at home. Like,
Yeah.
I can't afford to be 100% restrictive. There are nights where even when I'm cutting, I'm like, oh my God, these cookies, or it's what it is. You know, it's part of being human. You have to create that balance. But when you do end up looking for health, you get those benefits of, oh, you know what? I'm dropping weight too. I ended up dropping to a lighter weight class. I'm more competitive now. What else can I do?
Yeah. And I did message. I remember telling Ashley that same thing. I'm like, listen, I can't wait to see, because she's competing soon. I can't wait to see her performance take off, because not that maybe I don't know her nutrition beforehand, but like now she's really taking. Yeah. Brad, you have to be pretty tall to join this chat. At least
you can't
4'10". So like her nutrition's really on point, maybe more than before, and that's what I was saying to her. I was like, you've done so much with this; it's going to be exciting to see, and that's kind of like the moral of when you work with a powerlifter.
When I tell you that, it's amazing how, because me and her, we spent a good 2 to 3 weeks priming her system and just getting her to a good starting point. She wasn't under eating crazy, but she was for her size, for her tall and body frame. However, when I tell you that she's in a very, very, very small deficit, it's not even 20%. It's not even 15% of a deficit, because she's in prep, and we didn't want that to be the priority, the weight loss. We wanted just to really get her to feel better. And so she's not supposed to be losing more, and because of her training, she's losing fast, but she's at such a small caloric deficit that it's amazing to see her being so happy and energetic and not once, you know. And that's another thing, like when it comes to cutting, especially powerlifters, they get to this idea of, I have to make weight at a certain weight in a certain amount of time. If you are smart, you know, it's better to go at the slower pace and understand that if you do things correctly, you're gonna see longer term results than doing it quickly. Doing a water cut, you'll get 10 pounds off, but doing the actual weight loss process at the right time, you're gonna keep that weight off. And a lot of times we get so caught up in the idea that we have to do it so quick, like we forget the basics of it. Your metabolism is quick to understand. The human body is amazing at picking up change, and it is amazingly responsive at pulling in that change again. So when you are in a deficit for such a long time, there are processes in your body that are going to slow down to fight that change in losing weight, because at the end of the day, your body doesn't want to lose body fat. It's against its norm to lose body fat. You know, when you think back to like hunter and gatherers, their body composition was not that of a physical fit person. It's, you're going to hold on to body fat because you're going to try to preserve whatever you can in terms of energy. So when we're purposely losing body fat to maintain a lifestyle that's not the norm or not the natural body state, your body's going to fight you. And so if you don't properly refeed in a cut, you will hit those walls faster than you would if you take the time to understand, hey, we have such and such amount of time. Let's really strategize and plan it so that we can refeed in between us. I personally like to refeed every 3 weeks. That's a good amount of time for your body to like, okay, we're going to start noticing the changes. Let's stop it. Let's refeed. Make the body think that, no, we're not in a deficit. We're eating enough. And then you can go back to your cut. But a lot of times powerlifters get hung up on the idea of just the weight loss and don't think of the long-term results that you're going to get better.
I think that's a good way to like kind of summarize and wrap this whole thing up. Is you do have to understand like what are you trying to aim towards? Are you powerlifting because you like powerlifting and that's great? Do you also want to improve your performance as well? Do you like what is a short, like don't always look so short term, because I hate to say it to most people, but
Mhm.
if you're not aware, powerlifting is a long game. You can't just get into it. And some people, don't get me wrong, some people can get into it and they can make dramatic changes, but that can be newbie gains. That can be a lot of other factors. Some people are genetically gifted, but
Yeah.
especially too when you start taking nutrition on point. And if you do want to, let's say you're at an unhealthy weight and you get into powerlifting, for example, and then you want to take your nutrition as well and lose weight, you can do both. It's just maybe a long process. So you know what I mean? Like, I don't think we should, and like you said, you shouldn't try to have a short term, like, okay, I want to weigh in at 93 kilos, but I'm 110 kilos and I have 4 weeks to do it. It's like, well,
Mhm.
realistically, it's not going to go well. And then you
Right.
hear people say, I can water cut 10, 15 pounds, but
Yeah.
how many times has that backfired on people?
And
Is
then
that
there's like,
necessary? Is the other
yeah,
factor, because they're not elite lifters sometimes. Like, unless you money on the line, different story. You're getting paid to powerlift, different story. But most times it does not end well when you try and short term your nutrition um, in a short term amount of time and try and hit those lifts as well.
yeah, for sure. And then you have like the negative connotations with the water cut. Like,
Yeah,
do you have to do a water cut? No, unless you have something really strongly on the line, or
yeah,
you are like 2, 3 pounds off from a new weight class. Okay, cool.
yeah,
A water cut doesn't necessarily have to be bad. I've done water cuts where I don't feel the difference at all, but I'm not cutting more than 5% of my body weight. I'm not cutting
yeah,
more than 10 pounds ever. If anything, I don't ever recommend more than 5 to 6 pounds, because that's easy body weight to lose. That's water weight that can come out of your muscles easily. But if you're
yep,
trying to cut water weight plus fat, it's not going to happen. You're going to
yeah,
struggle and you're going to not make weight, and you're still going to be pissed off because you didn't make weight and put yourself through all of this
yeah,
nightmares of a water cut.
yeah. Which
So,
is that's
yeah,
a whole topic for another time, water cutting and things
for
like that.
sure. Yeah.
But yes, so thank you for explaining a little bit more how nutrition in powerlifting is a little bit different than Gen Pop. There's a lot of similarities and carryover, but I think
Yeah.
like realistically, a lot comes down to you're probably not fueling as well as you think you are sometimes, especially in powerlifting, especially when you get new clients. You're like, oh, well, I'm eating all this.
Mm-hmm.
And it can only be too like a few hundred calories, or just timing wise. Are you
Right.
doing the right thing at the right time for when you're
Mm-hmm.
training and all that stuff? So that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank
And we'll
you.
do more of these if we need to as well. Maybe we could do a water cut one. That would be fun. Just to see with that.
Yes, that would be an interesting one.
Enjoy your workout tonight. I hope it goes well as you train, and hopefully Thor doesn't get in too crazy with all those cookies and stuff. But
Hi.
thank you,
Thor
Yanni.
is,
Thank you for everyone that
yeah.
joined, and we'll see you guys next time.
All right. See you next time.